What up, though? I'm Cedric Sutton. This is Balance of Power. You came here to learn, so let's get it in. Alright, for today's lesson, we're going to go over one of our foundational videos. Now, these foundational videos is basically like a glossary for the purposes of this class. And this is a class. So this is like a glossary of terms so that you understand what we're talking about when we move into future videos. Similar to the other video where we talked about Rule 1, Rule 2, Rule 3. So, bang bang. Now, these aren't things that you might find anywhere else. There might be some phrases or things that people talk about in other relationship books or classes or whatever, but for the most part, this is something that I came up with through my decades of study and learning and something that I created. This is a Balance of Power exclusive. So, if you see these zones anywhere else, let me know, because that means somebody done stole something, and I might have to roll up. Nah, I mean. So these are the relationship zones. There are 6 zones. That's 10 fingers. I did that wrong. I can count.
The number of the day is 6.
But we're starting with 0. So it's zone 0, zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, zone 4, zone 5. So there are 6 zones, and we're going to go over them right now. But we're not going to go into great detail or length with each zone. There's going to be a separate video for each zone. Right now, this is just telling you what they are so you can get a basis of that. So in future videos, you know what we're talking about. So these relationship zones is basically what is the purpose for what you're doing. Are you in it for this? Are you in it for this? Are you in it for this? The first one, zone 0, fun. This is basically the zone where you're in it just for fun. This is like hit it and quit it, where you don't even gotta know anybody's name, where you're in it just for the you know, the recreation of it all. Now, I'm not saying that you should have this zone. I'm not advocating for anything for or against. I'm just telling you that it exists. That is zone 0 is fun. Zone 1, roster. Now, I'm not Rasta, not Rasta, as in Rasta, I mean roster, R-O-S-T-E-R, meaning you got multiple people who you are dating, or you're going out with, you're in the talking phase, you're talking to this one, talking to that one, you're on the phone with number 1, number 2, number 3, and oftentimes you might have numbers, you might have some kind of way of putting them in categories or hierarchy, especially if you're a dude. We do things by hierarchy. Who's the best? Who's the second best? Who's the third best? we rank you. That's just how the game go. I will, like I said, when we get to that video, I will let you know, ladies and gentlemen, if you have not been in these streets, if you haven't been in the game for that long, if you're early in the game, you might not know this. If you don't have guy friends and if you're not out there like that, these things might be kind of foreign to you, especially if you're from another country where this is not what you do very much. You kind of skip this zone. Hey, that's cool too, but I will explain it. So this is where you have multiple people who you are talking to on the phone or possibly literally going out on dates with, where you're going to coffee on Monday with person A, going to the park on another day with person B, and on the weekends you're with person C. Now, whether you're doing something with these people or not, on a physical level, that is up to you. The point is, you got multiple people who you're dealing with at the same time. Zone 2, dating. This is where you're actually exclusively dating one person, and you are kind of given a title to some extent. This is where titles begin. Now, just side note, and again, we'll get into this in more detail when we actually have the video. Gentlemen kind of know this, but this is more for the ladies right now. Ladies, if you don't got a title, you ain't got nothing. Get you a title. Title meaning you're his girlfriend, you're his woman, you're his lady. He has to give you a title. You can't just be one of. Because if you're just one of, then that means you're not in the same zone with your person. That means he's in zone 1, possibly zone 0, and you're in zone 2, which does not work if you two are not in the same zone. Which is one of the reasons why zone 2 is kind of the zone of death. This is where a lot of relationships fall off, where basically you're not even in a relationship yet. You're kind of starting to be, but it's a short-term thing. This is where it's tested the most. So you're gonna find out. So zone 2, it's exclusive dating. You don't have your roster anymore. You whittled it down to one person, and you and that person. That's my boyfriend, that's my girlfriend, that's your person now. You got one. Monogamy, all those conversations, things like that. Bang, bang. Zone 3, relationship. This is where you start to actually have a long-term relationship. So 9 months to a year of being with the same person, just them, where things get serious. This is where you have a title and you start doing things like possibly, I don't know, thinking about moving in together, thinking about proposing, thinking about marriage, having deeper conversations, and hopefully you had some of the conversations that we talked about in the conversation video, which if you don't know that video, we'll try to put it connected somewhere here and put it down in the description. Can't forget about the D. This is where things start to get really serious and you can truly call it a relationship. Now, I'm going to say this in other videos, but the way you can test a relationship is something that I call, acronym is POT. Don't really like the acronym, but some people like acronyms. But it's basically problems over time. That is how you can test whether something is viable or not, whether a person is viable, whether a relationship is viable. You're going to hear me talk about it a lot, but just real quick, problems over time. There's very little substitute for problems over time. You start to find out, and we'll get into this when we break down other relationship issues, but you don't really know somebody until you have problems over time. If you've been with somebody for 9 months but you've not had any problems over the course of that time, do you really know them? Do you really have a relationship? And if you've been with somebody for 9 months but it hasn't really, you might have had problems that you dealt with, kind of, but really, have you really spent time with that person? Because if it's 9 months of being with them, but you only saw them once a month because you guys have a long-term relationship, again, is it really a relationship? Have you really spent the time? So you got to have both elements. You got to have problems, and it has to be over a period of time for you to have that test. But again, we'll get into that in more detail. Zone 4, marriage. This is where you truly are married. You guys dropped rings on each other. You call yourself husband and wife, where your lives are truly connected, merged. You got bank accounts, you got houses, children. Now, especially right now in 2023 and beyond, depending on when you watch this, the concept of legal marriage might be up in the air, but basically, at the very least, you gotta have rings, you gotta have the title, you gotta live together, you don't have to have kids, but you gotta have those 3 things, for at least for me to consider it like a marriage. If you ain't got rings, and if you ain't got the title, if you don't live together, if you don't have all 3, I don't consider you married. This is where you can't just cut and run, you can't just dip out, you have to truly deal with your problems, and you should truly know a person before you get to this zone. You shouldn't be living with somebody or merging your life with somebody before you know yourself to a good degree, before you know them to a good degree. You should have similar plans and goals. You all should be doing this for real. Because if you're still trying to operate as if you're 2 separate people, then why'd you get married in the first place? What you doing? Zone 5. Zone 5, legacy. This is where you are grandparents, where you have not just your own kids like you would have in a marriage, but you've got grandkids now. This is the part of your life where you have to figure out how to deal with things like spending way more time with each other, because at this point you both are retired, or if only one of you worked, Now the one who worked is retired, and now you don't have the distractions anymore. No distractions of children who live in the house. No distractions of a job that takes you away. You are spending so much time with this other mother who you said you have committed to. And can you handle that? It's called legacy because it's also where you start to think about what you're leaving behind in the world. Whether that's financial, you're thinking about how much money are you going to split amongst your kids? How are you going to split it amongst your kids? If you have property, but also things like, let's say you don't have any kids, but you all do things like charity work. Are you dropping money on a church or a hospital or some kind of charity where you leave your name on a building, where you start thinking about mortality and what you're leaving behind for future generations, if they're not generations that you made with your own DNA, but what are you leaving behind in this world? You have to think about, how do you deal with death? Who's going to take care of you? If you don't have kids to take care of you or grandkids to take care of you, and you guys are trying to take care of you, like, there's a lot to go over. But we'll go over that, like I said, in the Zone 5 video, but that's what Zone 5 is about legacy. So, each of these zones we are going to be talking about extensively, each in their own individual videos, and then as the videos pop up, I'm going to be referencing these zones. So just in case you wonder to yourself, what you know about these zones, what you know about Zone 0, what you know about having a roster, you ain't a grandparent. You're right, I'm not a grandparent. But just really quickly, I'm not going to comment on all the rest, but I'll comment on the most obvious one. I'm not a grandparent. But I have been around for a minute. Now, I know you might be thinking, he don't look that old, but that's just the triple B. Benefits of being black, I'm older than I look. If y'all hear anybody else using the triple B, I created that. If you hear it anywhere else, let me know. But also, my background in financial services gives me a unique insight into the legacy portion of relationships. I can't tell you for years how many clients I've had where I'm sitting in front of a couple who are in their 70s, and how couples have to wrestle with their choices that they made throughout their life. Some of them are regrets, some of them feel happy and confident with their choices, but I can give you insight because I've had to deal with that portion of life on a professional level for years. That portion of life, just like the rest of these, can be difficult. It's very rewarding, but it definitely can be difficult. It's not the same as when you just catch somebody. It's not the same as just acquiring somebody. Because remember, acquisition is elementary. Retention is hard. That's it for today's lesson. Now the class is mostly free, but pay the fee. With a thumbs up or down, let a brother know what you're thinking about it. Now, we are a new channel and we're trying to grow, so do me a favor, hit subscribe, share this with folks. Let someone who you think might benefit from this. Share the love. Now, I know you like this learning, so come on back here and click on another video. Keep the learning going. Until next time, deuce deuce.